I was pumped when I was asked to check out the latest build for the upcoming Zenless Zone Zero, the hugely anticipated next title from developer MiHoYo, creators of Genshin Impact, which is pretty much unavoidable if you've been in any radius of a convention or the internet in general. Although Zenless Zone Zero is a much different beast from Genshin Impact and its follow-up Honkai Star Rail, primarily in that it's much more badass. If you're quick to dismiss this as another free-to-play microtransaction-laden mobile game, it would honestly be a disservice to Zenless Zone Zero, which is really so much more than that. Just look at this gameplay and tell me if this looks like a run-of-the-mill mobile game. Like Genshin Impact, Zenless Zone Zero is developed with consoles and PC in the crosshairs, while simultaneously being available on mobile, without compromising its aim of being a full-fledged title you can play completely free start to finish, with every paid instance being entirely unnecessary to the game. Having played it for weeks now, I haven't spent a cent without a single interruption to its dazzling, addictive, smooth-flowing gameplay. And when you can envelop yourself in this much action in such a slick, cutting-edge package without spending a dime, you can really see how this model makes a lot of sense. Of course, you won't be thinking about any of this when you're actually playing the game, since you'll likely be distracted by its compelling rhythm of continuous ass-kickings and all-out visual blowouts of chaos with MiHoYo's signature cast of lively characters in a setting unlike ever before, which you can also sign up for pre-registration down below right now to get in on the non-stop action as soon as it's available. Anyone who is critical of Genshin Impact for feeling derivative of something like Breath of the Wild, Zenless Zone Zero should feel like a breath of fresh air that's certainly a lot more wild. And while it wears its obvious inspirations on its sleeve as loudly and proudly as possible, Zenless Zone Zero is strikingly original through and through, primarily with its unique progression system, fresh as hell gameplay, and radical presentation. There is something to be said about MiHoYo making the biggest games to ever come out of China thanks to titles like these, especially when most people will assume this is a JRPG on the surface. While Zenless Zone Zero does stand up on its own against a typical JRPG, MiHoYo was started by 3 Shanghai Jiaotong University otakus, aka nerds obsessed with Japan culture. The H and Y standing for 2 of the founders, the O's being added to sound more like companies like Google, and the Mi being thrown at the front as a reference to Hatsune Miku after they found Hoyo was already registered. If that doesn't prove they're otakus, I don't know what will. And you can tell Zenless Zone Zero feels like a game created by anime nerds who truly revere anime culture, paying tribute to anime in all the ways it's beloved, which is why the games are appreciated by otakus all over the world, and also why the game doesn't skip on an abundance of cute anime girls. 10 out of 10, sold. In fact, Zenless Zone Zero feels like the ultimate otaku tribute rather than something trying to bank on its popular influences, with an extremely fresh concoction that lands somewhere between The Matrix and Dragon Ball Z. Once again, basically everything badass. It took me a minute to get my head around the whole thing, as ZZZ's twisting cyberpunk narrative structure is a more mind-warping trip than Genshin Impact and Honkai Star Rail's more straightforward adventures. The game begins in what feels like The Matrix, as we hone into characters known as the Cunning Hares, who have jumped into an alternate dimension known as a Hollow as they plan to pull off a heist against the powerful Red Bang gang. MiHoYo's goal to create fan-favorite characters remains evident, largely key to the success of their previous titles, as they introduced to us Ambi, a reserve cyborg vaguely reminiscent of Makoto from Ghost in the Shell, and Billy, a robot who appears to have a few screws loose and wears a red coat that has a clear Akira reference on it, although his character seems to be more of a reference to Dante from Devil May Cry based on how he plays. The game wastes no time throwing you into the real star of the show, which is the game's high-octane, hyper-stimulated, chaotic combat, and for good reason, as this is where Zenless Zone Zero really shines. I've talked about on the channel before being impressed with Genshin Impact's fluid combat thanks to its rapid character switching system that allows you to utilize each character's unique abilities on the fly in smooth real-time combat, which already felt like a fresh distinction from a more typical JRPG. Zenless Zone Zero seems to be driven by taking that idea from Genshin Impact, cranking it up to 11, injecting it with spectacular flair of Studio Trigger, and downing it with a case of Red Bull. It's f***ing dope. Instantly, you're thrown into environments that look reminiscent of something like Austral Chain, as you stand off against interdimensional creatures that erupt with a visual splendor that could overload 2B or Bayonetta. At the press of a single button is Zenless Zone Zero's centerpiece mechanic, as one character instantly swaps into your current position, who now has an entirely different array of moves or even a different combat system altogether, allowing you to strategically assassinate each enemy by overwhelming it with various combat styles and gorgeous spectacles of beautifully animated maneuvers, until the fight culminates into multiple swooping camera angles and eases into a slow motion extravaganza to extreme satisfaction every time. It's pretty fire. The music and sound are especially outstanding, and the combat with the audio combined make for an experience that's vividly entrancing. The music goes hard as f***, and the sound is extremely punchy and gratifying, with you being able to deeply feel each hit to your enemies with every visceral blow. The diverse variety of characters to bring to the battlefield keeps Zenless Zone Zero visually and audibly exciting without ever getting exhausting, with the whole thing feeling smooth as butter, allowing you to turn out attacks and dodge moves at the ease of a mouse click, keystroke, or a combination of different moves in effortless badass perfection. Small aside, Jet Set Radio Future might be my favorite game of all time. Sega, don't up this upcoming reboot. The 2002 Xbox game represents everything I loved since I was a kid, with The Matrix also being one of my favorite movies, which maybe makes it more clear why Zenless Zone Zero sort of hits hard for me. Jet Set Radio's impact has become more obvious in recent years with titles like Sunset Overdrive, Splatoon, Rollerdrome, and Hi-Fi Rush. Zenless Zone Zero manages to capture the same musical spirit in a modern offbeat way that's fat as hell. ZZZ integrates elements of drum and bass, trap, trip-hop, big beat, breakbeat, and general instrumental hip-hop that represents everything a game like this should have. And it slaps. I don't know who the lead composer is, but they've done an awesome job creating a banger soundtrack for a flashy, mind-bending cyberpunk game. There's even what sounds like a plucking stand-up bass with simple beats underneath and a few of the slower moments, which feels like a direct homage to this production from the original Jet Set Radio on Dreamcast. MiHoYo's talent for emulating anime campiness is on full display, with this leader being unable to stop crying because you hurt his feelings.
Why would you steal from the Red Fang Gang?
The voice acting is excessively over the top and made for quite a few moments that actually had me laughing out loud, or shaking my head at the screen, though always capturing the spirit of anime cringe humor.
Ew! Why do I feel embarrassed watching myself act cute?
What? You mean all those meows you add when you talk are an act?
A lot of this is presented in the form of a visual novel rather than a fully animated cutscene, which is a welcome change, although I recommend switching to autoplay mode rather than clicking through every line. The amount of dialogue in the game's rich narrative can become a little tedious without that autoplay feature, which maybe should be the default at least once the story gets going. While Anby and Billy are still in the hollow dimension, the leader of the Cunning Hares, Nicole, outside of the alternate dimension in the real world, comes to two characters known as proxies. This brother and sister duo, who serve as the game's main protagonists, work at a video store which runs as a front for a hacking operation which they run in the back room, where they assist others through missions with their outside access to the hollow. It's cool to get this sort of Matrix alternate realities mechanic driving the game world, with you being able to do real world tasks in what feels like a tiny slice of a lifelike moment from Persona, and then being able to dive into an alternate dimension where suddenly absurd combat is possible. It makes for an exciting game mechanic while also making some intriguing sci-fi twists to some otherwise typical RPG cliches. Jacking into the hollow and going on a story objective also introduces a new mind-warping mechanic into the mix that's truly unlike anything I've seen before in an RPG like this. Maybe someone down below can tell me something this reminds them of, but you assume the proxy's avatar of this bunny thing called a bang boot that you navigate with directional keys across a series of video monitor CRTs, or PVMs to be more accurate. You bounce across what can be viewed as a game board puzzle and maze as you navigate a visual representation of your path through the hollow, solving puzzles to get your characters further through the domain, landing on red screens along the way that work as enemy encounters as you jump into another dazzling battle, the loadout of characters you selected to dive into the hollow. I found this mechanic extremely inventive, especially after playing for a few hours and the game began innovating more of its game board and its puzzles, while slowly laying on a heavier amount of serene, hugely captivating combat. The beginning moments of this game seemed to rely heavily on these puzzle moments before it got into a rhythm I found myself completely zeroed in on. Really, I think the more combat we can do at the beginning, the better. I did still love this mechanic and thought it made for a fun way to invigorate an action RPG with a puzzler, but to win more players from the start, I think ZZZ should layer on more endless combat and some environmental exploration right from the beginning. Another mode opened up after I played for a few days that was essentially just this, called a Rally Commission, in what seemed to be a roguelike to crawl your way through as much of a single environment as possible before you die. And I think it would make a lot of sense if the game opened up with a moment like this to give players a better introduction to the game, even if players end up dying before they really get to see anything. Despite this, the game does get to this quick enough, and it's a thrilling adrenaline rush all the way to that point. I can see massive amount of players getting hooked on the puzzler aspect from the beginning like I did, but I think everyone is mostly going to be here for the high of its relentlessly striking combat, which is where I think MiHoYo has another hit on its hands. Aside from having a ton of cool characters and having a considerable assortment of cute anime girls, the original characters, ranging from a shark girl to a talking bear, are ludicrous enough to drive the main incentive behind Zenless Zone Zero, which should come as no surprise, as lovable characters are what have made MiHoYo games huge hits, and Zenless Zone Zero makes every attempt to recapture this once again, as I found myself invested in seeing what outrageous character was going to barge into the video store next. What makes the character collecting even more attractive in Zenless Zone Zero is how much each character brings to the battlefield, each with their own attacks, special moves, and distinct combo tricks that you can master in the extracurricular combat simulator. In each battle, the characters build up a meter that allows them to do a trifecta, where 3 characters whoop the enemy's ass simultaneously in their own stylish as way. And to top it off, each character also has their own ultimate finisher, where they fully take over the screen as they mercilessly decimate the unwitting enemy to cosmic pieces. Owned. Unfortunately, I didn't get to play the game enough to decide my favorite, but of the characters I played, it's hard to decide, as pretty much every character brought something provocative to the story and gameplay. Though you can't go wrong with Billy's super sleek gunplay, and the Shark Girl seemed to have some seriously vicious moves. Though getting to see the rest of the characters is the main reason to keep playing, and once the game is out, I imagine they're going to introduce way more, meaning there will be more opportunities to find your favorite cyberpunk waifu than any game ever before. Despite some slow progression at the beginning of the game, Zenless Zone Zero succeeds in a number of ways that makes this an undeniable recommendation. The combat and presentation alone are basically a 10. If you're curious about Zenless Zone Zero, even in the slightest, I highly recommend playing it to get a feel of its gorgeously smooth combat and the kinetic character switching system. The more you master the movesets of each character, the more evident how much complexity there is behind the simplicity and how cohesively the whole thing comes together, with countless cute characters along the way that continue to make the combat more wild, as well as this ultimately being a game that costs $0. It's hard to see why there'd be a reason not to step into a hollow and to give Zenless Zone Zero a go.
Let me give you a little treat. Like this.
Use the link down below to pre-register for ZZZ today and try the experience for yourself as soon as it's available.
This won't hurt. Not.
Thanks again to Zenless Zone Zero for giving me a chance to review the game, and thank you for watching this video. Doing game reviews is something I've wanted to do on Oddheader since its inception, and Zenless Zone Zero provided me the chance to give an honest review and finally get an exclusive look at a huge game before it's released. I'd love to do more reviews like these in the future, especially getting to preview games as an exclusive look. If you're a game developer or a publisher looking to promote a game, feel free to contact me, and thank you again for watching and supporting this opportunity as well. Your viewership is truly what makes this possible. And thank you again, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe and stay tuned for the next Unsolved Mysteries episode soon. Shout out to Angel the Fox, Ash Photography, BitWiff27, Black Evie50, Chad Biscuits, Eddie Talkspin the Bleach Primid, Flex, Kieran Bolton, The Meatly, Phoenix157, Rackman22, Riley S, Robert Eisenman, Rolkot Mifua, Select, Starcore2, Taryn Stock, and Towerizer for their Patreon support. Stay tuned.